Hey everyone. Thanks for stopping in. Um, so I wanted to talk a little bit about how not to follow this case. Um, I'm just tired of some of the stuff. And so I thought, well, let's talk about how not to follow this case. Um, the first thing that I want to do is I'm in the process of rereading because this is second time I've read this book. Susan Hendricks wrote a great book called Down the Hill: My Descent into the Delphi Murder in Delphi, Indiana, the Delphi murders. Um, and it's just a wonderful book, you guys. If you get a chance to pick it up and read it, please absolutely do. I'm going to read to you the foreword that was written for her book by Kelsey, Libby's sister. I think it's really important, and I think that because of what I'm going to talk about, we need to hear this. So this is the foreword that was written for Susan Hendricks' book by Kelsey German Siebert. Growing up, it was Libby and me against the world. During and after our parents' divorce, we never knew whose house we would be at when, and eventually moved in with our grandparents. Throughout all of this, Libby was my constant. We went through every high and every low together. I always thought that it was inevitable that she would be with me through everything life brought our way. That was until February 13th, 2017, when life as I knew it came crashing down and turned into the kind of nightmare that until that moment, the people in small town Delphi had only heard about on television. Up to that point in our lives, Libby was the one I would go to when I needed someone to talk to and confide in. I would share everything with her, as she did with me. I spent the first year after her death trying to learn how to move forward in life without her. What was I going to do now that my whole life and my whole world felt and looked so different? At 17, I had no idea how to cope with a traumatic loss, or even loss in general for that matter. The one thing I did know was that Libby would want me to move forward by living my life. Sorry, my nose is driving me crazy today. And not letting her murder take mine also. I knew I had to do this to honor her life and memory. Even though I was well aware that this was what my sister would want for me, I couldn't stop the continued roller coaster ride of emotions. During the year that followed, I was scared to sleep in my own room alone. I quit my job because I was uncomfortable walking to my car by myself at night. And I stopped parking in the student parking lot at school because I knew that after swim practice, there would be more people walking to the front lot than the back. The knowledge that the person who had cold-heartedly murdered two teenagers in broad daylight was still out there somewhere, living their life as if nothing had happened, took hold of me and led me to a very dark place, a place I prayed I was strong enough to stay away from. It was as though I had lost myself, and the person I normally turned to for comfort and support in those times was now gone. I felt incredibly alone. At that point, it seemed like no one in the world understood what I was feeling. My family constantly assured me that I could talk to them, but I worried that anything I said would only add to their grief. I couldn't find a counselor who knew how to help me work through the trauma I had experienced. My friends wanted to help, but the advice they gave me felt empty, even though they meant well. I knew they couldn't possibly understand the emotions that I was going through. I hit rock bottom with seemingly no way out. All I could do was hold on to my faith and pray that Christ would lead me through these fires and help me to find peace. After over a year of fighting what seemed like a never-ending battle, my family and I were invited to CrimeCon to speak about Abby and Libby's case. Up until that point, I had stayed silent and had never given any thought to putting myself out there to help in the public efforts to solve the girl's case. Before going into the event, I had only planned on sitting back at the booth and handing out flyers, which is what I ended up doing. Even so, this event ended up being a turning point for me. At CrimeCon in 2018, I met Michelle Cruz. Her sister, Janelle Cruz, was murdered by the Golden State Killer, along with several of the other sister survivors. These women inspired me. They still do. I watched in awe as they shared their stories without fear and celebrated the capture of their sister's killer. On the last day of the event, I found the courage to go up to Michelle and ask for her help. She told me to put myself out there and to never stop fighting for answers. She gave me the push I needed to break out of my shell and fight for my sister through social media. Within days of starting a Twitter account for the case, I gained thousands of followers who wanted to join my family and me in the fight for justice. Making the decision to put myself out there, I became an advocate. And in the process of doing interviews and podcasts, I made many new friends. Several of the people I met through my account had also been affected in some way by violent crimes. Some of them had also lost siblings to homicide, and we were able to talk about our experiences and understood each other's feelings. For the very first time, I felt like I had a community that understood what I was going through. My prayers had finally been answered. In the years that followed this conference, I have witnessed the best and the worst of humanity. Social media, I have learned, is a double-edged sword. It can be a wonderful tool sharing necessary information quickly and efficiently with the public, but it can also be filled with some users spouting hatred and untruths, ruining innocent people's lives. It was heartbreaking to read the constant speculation of what might have happened to the girls. Luckily, there have been so many people who have supported our cause and wanted to help. I have always been a believer that good outweighs the bad, and the world has shown that to be true. The people of Carroll County poured their love over us and the investigative team like no one could have ever expected. Strangers from around the world like Michelle Cruz, Sarah Turney, Cheryl McCullum, and Susan Hendricks, to name a few. It would take dozens of pages to name them all, have stood by our side through all the ups and downs of the investigation to see justice through to the end. My relationship with Susan has been particularly special. One of the first times my family met Susan, I accompanied her and the HLN crew to the Monon High Bridge. I had met her previously, and it was obvious to us how much she cared. But on this particular visit, it was even more evident. As we walked out to the bridge, we made casual conversation. I joked that they were overdressed in their winter coats. It wasn't that cold, but because they were used to the weather back in Atlanta, they had to buy warmer clothes upon their arrival in Indiana. Susan was emotional, even more so the closer we got to the beginning of the bridge. She kept reminding me that she wanted to make sure she covered Abby and Libby's story well, making sure the world would know that they were real girls and that I was comfortable throughout the process. Over the years of knowing her, she has never failed at this. She is constantly reminding us of how much Abby and Libby, as well as our families, have impacted her life, how this became to be much more than just another story. I don't know that she realizes that what she has done and that she has done the same for us. Susan is one of several people who have shown us compassion and empathy in her reporting. She truly is one of the good ones, and I'm forever grateful for her and the friendship that we have gained from her. I have learned so much in the years that I have spent advocating for Libby and Abby and for others. One day, I hope I'm able to share some of those experiences with the world in more depth. But for now, here are just a few of the lessons that had the biggest impact on me. I have learned how to have faith and to always remain hopeful, even when life feels hopeless. I have learned to stand up for the violence and the voiceless because I have a voice to use. I have learned to never stop fighting for what matters. And most of all, I have learned that I am not defined by the trauma I have lived through, and neither are you. Moving forward looks different as we reach this next chapter in this case. I have taken time to process the arrest, awaiting answers that will eventually come, and has been a much needed break. I'm finding new ways to be a part of this community that has had my back for so long while I work to find myself again. Now, as a wife and a mother, I will finally be living the life that Libby would want me to live. I am no longer stuck in 2017 as I had been for so long. I may not have all the answers or know what the next step is, but what I do know is this. Life has a funny way of making sure you have exactly what you need when you need it most, especially in your darkest and most lonely of days. You are not defined by what has happened to you. Words from a girl who was merely 17 years old when her baby sister was tragically taken from this world in a most horrific manner and by the most ultimate of evil. Now, 7+ years later, we have an arrest in the case. We have an arrest, and we have been waiting for a year and a half for this person, Richard Allen, to come to justice and to have his day in court. After all, in the United States of America, you are innocent until proven guilty. In a court of law, in front of a jury of your peers. I firmly and absolutely believe in our criminal justice system. I do not believe it's perfect, but I do believe it is the best justice system in the world. I also believe that Richard Allen should be getting the best defense possible, as all Americans should get the best defense possible when accused of crimes, no matter what. After all, that's what the United States Constitution affords all of us. It is my hope that is what will happen in this case. We have seen so much for those of us who have followed this case since day one. There have been so many twists and turns like no other. Social media has been a whirlwind of speculation. I can't even imagine what it must have been like as a family member to have to listen to all the speculation that's been out there about what the girls went through, how they ultimately died, and all of the other horrific things that have been said about them. That's how you don't follow this case. It's really easy to get wrapped up in these cases and think of them as just another case. The Delphi murders and the story of Libby and Abby are near and dear to my heart and have been since day one. I've explained over time as to why that is, and it's because I can see myself as both of them in that time in my life with my best friend, and how easily it could have been us out there on that bridge that day. I think a lot of people have identified with the girls. I think a lot of people have come to champion justice for the girls because of the bravery of both of the girls. Anna said it best. They didn't leave each other's side. We know that they probably had the ability to run and run in opposite directions, but they chose to stay with one another. And that says a lot about them and about their character and about the type of people that they were. 13 and 14-year-olds are young. They're just coming into what it means to be pre-adult. We all remember what it was like to be 13 and 14 years old and what it felt like, um, thinking about starting high school and how your world was going to explode. Abby and Libby were no different. They loved to have fun and laugh. They were very joyful. They were joyful kids. They loved making others laugh. They loved doing things for others. I think about the girls a lot. And to me, as you guys all know, this case is nothing short of a conundrum of crazy, and it's the best way to explain it. It has gone off the rails so many different ways in so many different directions, and everyone forgets what this fight is all about. And the fact that it is about Abby and Libby and their families and them receiving the justice that they so deserve. So how now to follow the case? You don't follow the case by jumping in both feet and listening to the salacious, horrific podcasters, YouTubers, social media people who have no idea what the case is about, no idea what it's like to be the victim of a violent crime, um, no idea what it's like to lose a family member to violent crime, let alone a child. Those who choose to follow that type of narrative around and surrounding this case, those people are hurtful. They do nothing in a good fashion for the telling of Abby and Libby's story, and quite the contrary. It is my hope that as we move towards the trial date, that the noise and the crazy will quiet down and people will focus on what is most important. I find myself not listening to most channels anymore. I just can't. I don't have time for it. I don't have time for that craziness. I spoke to Becky while I was in Delphi for the memorial walk. We talked at length about many different things, most which I will never share with anyone because it's private. They were private things. But I will say this, she gave me a better understanding of who Libby was and what she had gone through her entire life. And Kelsey right along with her. And those two girls had more love and more compassion and care inside of them, even though they came from a family like so many of us that have tears in the fabric of that family. But they came together as a family unit to care for one another as the best that they could. And they did it for the girls. I've said all along, I commend Carrie and Derek for having the forthright sense at the time in their lives when they were battling something horrific to make sure their girls were taken care of. Not all children get that, and we all know that, especially in this day and age with the way addiction is in this country and the taboo that's around it and that surrounds it. We all have skeletons in our family, and I've said all along, if we had somebody with a magnifying glass taking a look at our families and every single corner of it and every single word that is said, we all would have things that we would not want people to talk about. It's none of our business. We don't need to know the ins and outs of that family. What we do need to know is that two girls who were just really basically beginning life, lives were tragically ended, and they deserve justice. Law enforcement has worked diligently to bring someone to justice. Richard Allen has been arrested and charged with the crime. We don't know all the facts regarding that arrest. We know some of them, but we don't know all of it. And until we see all of it, we need to be careful. We need to really be careful about what we put out there and what we say. One of the things that I've wondered is what's going to happen when the case does finally become adjudicated, one way or the other, whether you're a person who is looking for uh, Richard Allen to go free, or a person who believes that Richard Allen is guilty and needs to pay for the crime. Where are we going to be when this case is over? How are people going to react at the end? What is that going to do to the family that are left behind in the wake of this tragedy? There are no winners in this case. There will be no winners if Richard Allen is found guilty. His family will be torn apart. They will become victims. They will become victims of Richard Allen. If Richard Allen is found innocent and he's acquitted, he'll never have a normal life because he will always be known as the man who was accused of the Delphi murders. And there will be those people who believe that he was a guilty man who went free. That is hard to wrap your head around when you're thinking about this case. Um, the emotions that are around this case are palpable. Um, they are extremely high, and as they always are with violence against children. I think everyone has those same kinds of high emotions when we're talking about these types of cases. One of the things that we need to be able to do is put those emotions aside and look at things in a more logical and factual element. Not easy to do for everyone. Critical thinking is not common. Not anymore. Not in this society. And I'm thankful for some of the great critical thinkers around this case who are constantly making videos and talking about the case. Those who have no agendas, they just want justice, whatever justice that may be. They want the truth. That's what the family wants. The family also believes in law enforcement and what law enforcement has done for them in this case. And I believe that we will have a trial. I don't see Richard Allen pleading in this case. First of all, I don't think that the state has even put that on the table, and I'm not so sure that they will. But no matter, I wanted to put out there how Kelsey felt and what she was going through after that fateful day in February when she dropped her sister and her sister's best friend off at the Monon High Bridge and left. They talk about survivor guilt. It's a real thing. And it's really hard. It's hard for an adult to deal with, let alone a 17-year-old. One thing I know is that Kelsey was forced to grow up very rapidly. I think she's grown up right before our eyes. And I'm very proud to say I think she's done a very, very fantastic job of it, given all the publicity around the case and the negativity that she's had to endure online by a few creators. As we go forward, let us not forget, and let us remember how I always say it, that how we tell their story matters, and it should matter. And if it doesn't matter to you, then maybe you shouldn't be doing this type of social media. I will continue to fight for justice for Abby and Libby. The captain of True Crime Garage was a guest on my show this past week, and he asked me a very poignant question. What was I going to do when the Delphi case was over? And it got me to thinking about where my channel is headed and where I go from here. Because the Delphi murders has been something that I have consumed myself with when it comes to this genre for 7+ years. And it's just a part of me now. I think about them every single day. I'm reading something about the case, or I am looking into interviews or court documents, talking to others about those documents, talking to others about where the case is sitting or standing. There's always something going on. So what happens when all that goes away? There are so many cases that need to be covered, and I'm not gonna go away. I am gonna continue to cover cases because I want to make a difference. I hope that I've made a difference. I think I've made a difference. But I thank all of you for being here. I thank you for following me, for supporting Behind the Crime Door, for supporting me, Kristen, always having my back. I know the negativity that's out there. It's hard not to know about it, but I will tell you that, let the haters hate, because kindness and compassion is where it's at, and that's who I am. That's who I will always be. It's how I raised my children. It's how I have tried to raise my grandchildren, and I try to be a good example of that with the compassion and the love and the forgiveness. So I will be sorry. I will be having surgery on Tuesday, as some of you may know, that watch me. I'm having my knee replaced. I'm not sure how my content is gonna go. It's gonna depend on my rehab and how I'm healing. I hope that I will be able to be here, um, and we can, discuss and talk about things as we get closer, um, to the trial. We're getting close now. We're gonna be within 30 days of the trial this week, and, um, I believe jury questionnaires may have already gone out to prospective jurors. So there is that, and we do have that, coming up. So we'll just continue to move forward together and hold them close to our hearts and never take away their hope. I have said that for many, many years, because without hope, they have nothing, and I won't do that to them. I want them to have hope. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, if you can, pay it forward. Be kind. It doesn't take anything to be kind. Good night, everyone. And thank you so much for watching Behind the